plenty of football talking about. And, you know, when I was younger, I never realized how important spring ball was because it was just like, no, that's baseball time, that's basketball playoffs, etc. But as a coach, what is it? Give me like the big picture. The thing that you most want to get from your spring practices.
Fundamentals. This is a time where obviously you're not preparing for a game. So you got to go back to basics. And by back to basics, I remember the first week of spring practice, I wanted our defense, there was no line stunts, there was no blitzing. We were going to line up in one defense, Mike. We were going to play 2 coverages, 4 running plays, 5 pass plays, and all we wanted to see was who could block, who could tackle, who could get off the fundamentals. And then you combine that with convincing your players, this is a time of year where you trust your training. In other words, there's things that we all need to get better at.
Right.
Okay, we're going to work on those basic things right now, and then when we transfer them over to a game or a scrimmage, you got to trust your training, what we've been working on, and break those habits. That's the only way you're going to improve. So that was always a big thing. And then as we got into it, this was a great time to experiment with players. Okay, by that I mean that defensive lineman that you recruited that isn't quite quick enough, this is a time maybe to take a look at him as an offensive lineman, right? Or the receiver that just doesn't have the hands, but boy, he's tough and he's got good feet, put him over on defense. I would do a lot of that stuff. And then lastly, every coach at the end of the year, you got to be careful you don't get bored, but they do. And everyone's got new ideas that you want to tweak, we say, and add on offense, Mike, defense, special teams. This is the time of year to see if you like it.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of good stuff that if you manage it right and you budget it right, you can become a better football team. You should be.
Well, the reason we are getting Dave's thoughts on spring football is because this is a busy weekend in the Big Ten. It's time for our big story, which is to focus on what's happening on Saturday. You got a triple header alert tomorrow. Full day of spring football, the Minnesota spring game. Then Matt Rule leads the Huskers on to Lincoln's historic field for the red-white game, and then Luke Fickell's debut in Madison. It's all tomorrow on the Big Ten Network and on the Fox Sports app. So let's start with the Gophers first. PJ Fleck and company unfortunately had to move their game indoors. Won't have fans. Bad weather is supposed to be there. Construction with their scoreboard, etc. But still, the story isn't the actual game as we know. It's the things you're learning. And when it comes to Minnesota, we're going to learn a slightly different offense. Kirk Ciarrocca was the offensive coordinator last year. His second go-around with PJ Fleck in Minneapolis. He's already gone. He's off to Rutgers. They're bringing in not a new guy, new guys. Matt Simon and Greg Harbaugh to run the offense. What do you expect from them?
Well, that's going to be, that's easier said than done from a head coach's perspective. I mean, PJ Fleck, when Kirk was there, one guy's calling the plays, he's setting the practice schedule on offense, and that's it. Now you got 2 guys, so PJ's going to have to manage who's calling the runs, who's calling the passes, when do we want to take a chance, all those things. There's going to be a little bit more on PJ's plate, but it comes down to Minnesota. At the end of the day, with losing Mo Ibrahim and you lose Trey Potts, we all know that Minnesota is about running the football. And to me, that's the biggest challenge that they've got to come out. I don't care who the coordinator is. You better come out of this spring practice with confidence in running the ball. They graduate, 2, 3 of their offensive linemen are gone. So you're replacing the offensive line. The strength of the team coming back on offense is really the receivers, right? You got Austin Bell coming back, Autumn Bell, and then you got Daniel Jackson. Those 2 guys coming back. So you got veteran receivers, but now you got a new quarterback. So to me, defense is going to be fine with Joe Rossi. I mean, he's a smart guy. They've got good schemes. They do it every year. To me, the challenge is going to be getting the running game going on offense, and now how can we utilize a new starting quarterback, and take advantage of these talented receivers we got.
Right, Ibrahim gone is a big loss. It's the leading rusher in the history of Minnesota Gopher football. There's been some great running backs there. Nobody had more than him. You referenced the fact there's a new quarterback. Tanner Morgan was only allowed 11 years in college, which seems a shame. They should have given him more than the 11. But nonetheless, he's gone in his mid-40s at this point. So the Ethan Kaliakmanis is the guy who's been in the program for a little bit now. I mean, every time there's a quarterback change, that's one of the big stories in the offseason.
And you know what? Ethan, talking to people that were at practice this year, I mean, he can make the throws from a passer, but I think he's going to bring, and he showed a little bit of that last year, he's going to show more athleticism, and he's going to show the ability to run the football more. So maybe you don't have a running back like Mo, okay, but maybe you get a little bit more quarterback run involved this year to pick up the slack and kind of balance that out a little bit. So they're excited. I mean, they're excited about Ethan. I can tell you that right now for a fact. Moving forward, they're excited to see what he can do because they feel like he's got enough potential and his attitude, and he's such a great kid.
Before we leave this, you did briefly mention the defense. If there's one area you think needs help, is it defensive line for the Gophers?
It is. I think everything starts with the defensive line. It's kind of been, and they lost a couple guys to the transfer portal. They graduated a couple. As I said, schematically, no one does a better job in the conference than the defense coordinator, Joe Rossi. You got smart guys, you got guys that are willing, but you still have to have those guys up front that can make things happen. That's the uncertainty right now of this football team defensively.
In general, feelings are pretty good in Minneapolis. 9 wins last year. They made the Pinstripe Bowl, won that. They're feeling like things are heading in a pretty good direction in Minneapolis. Same can obviously not be said in Lincoln. That's why they had a brand new head coach. Scott Frost is out. Matt Rule is in. He's known as a program builder. That's what he did at Temple. That's what he did at Baylor. What's the biggest challenge for Rule in his first year at the helm?
Well, I think, you just hit on it. And I know Matt going back when I was the head coach at Pitt, Matt was the head coach at Temple. So we got to know each other pretty good. Obviously, he played at Penn State. There was a lot of ties between us. And you're right, he's a program builder. And I think the Nebraska fans need to keep their focus on the word builder.
Right.
Okay? Because he didn't make it happen the first year at Temple. He didn't make it happen the first year at Baylor. Okay? When Scott Frost went there, the first thought that I had too was Scott Frost, Tom Osborne National Championship.
Right.
Here we come. Everybody get out of the way. It's going to happen.
And his team was just undefeated 2 years before Scott Frost got there.
Exactly. So that pressure or that mentality of your fans, your administration, everybody, the students that we're going to be a national champ, they just need to calm down a little bit, give Matt Rule a chance. He will run the football. I mean, his history going all the way back to Temple, I mean, the quarterback at the Bears signed to back up, P.J. Walker, he's a dual threat quarterback. So that's what we're going to see, obviously, out of him. And at the end of the day, I would end every practice. We all talk about how close Scott Frost was, but they didn't finish, and they would kind of self-destruct.
Right.
I mean, I would come up with, if I'm Matt Rule, something to finish practice every day on a positive note. Yeah. I mean, you want those guys walking in the locker room feeling like we just won that drill, that play, whatever it might be.
I feel like expectations are so important for a rebuild. I think it might be easier than people might think for Rule to get the fans' expectations in line. They are a smart fan base in Nebraska. They are not your average. I remember when I was at college at Missouri, Nebraska came to a game, and the fans there were talking to me about our second-string wide receivers. Like, how do you know that? It's not even your team. I think they're smart enough to get that. The expectations are low this year. It's about building that foundation. And then next year and the year after, they're starting to expect wins to come.
Yeah, I agree. And they're doing a good job recruiting. I mean, they're very active in the transfer portal. I mean, this is going to be important at least to build a base and then go from there. So Matt Rule's he's got enough experience as a head coach. NFL, 2 college programs, building him, that he's gonna handle the players the right way. They're going to respond. And he also is aware. Trust me. Matt is well aware of what's going on outside the locker room.
Right. You did mention the running QBs, too. I think it's interesting. Rule's history is bringing speed guys in, right?
Yep.
When he was at Baylor, he wasn't recruiting 4- and 5-star guys. He was recruiting fast guys who he knew he could teach the game. Because he said, I think we talked about this on one of the signing days, I can't teach speed, but I can teach strategy. And that's going to be interesting to see how that works in Lincoln.
I remember talking to him when he was at Temple, and they had some players up there that were the same way, that they weren't the biggest, but they had a lot of team speed up there, and they found ways to upset people and at the end make a play to close out a game. I think that's his philosophy. That's what Matt believes in.
Crazy to think Nebraska hasn't won more than 5 games since 2016.
Yeah, that's
uphill climb for them to get back to where they've been for so long. All right, another game to get to is Wisconsin. I mentioned Luke Fickell's going to join us in just a little bit. The new head coach there after his incredible run as a head coach at Cincinnati, taking that program to the college football playoff. One of the interesting things is Phil Longo. He brought in as his offensive coordinator, a guy who has that Mike Leach background of pass, 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 pass. Now, he does run the ball too, but for 30 years offensively in Madison, you run the ball for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it's worked to tremendous success. How different are things going to feel this year?
I think a lot different because coaches, they're going to do what they believe in. You know, and you mentioned Phil Longo. That's what he's done. He's thrown the ball. Yes, he's balanced, and Luke will allude to that a little bit. But I think the one thing that Luke Fickell has done a great job of, and following him at Cincinnati, and I don't know if it was because Urban Meyer had the great reputation of, I thought, even though they were getting 4- and 5-star recruits, boy, those guys played like 5-star. I mean, they got the most out of their players. And when you look at Cincinnati, Luke, he was getting 3-star players, some 4-star, but he got those guys playing at the 5-star level. So Luke Fickell, when I think of him, he does a great job of developing his players. Now, you mentioned it. When you look at the West, and we were talking this morning, depending what Purdue does on offense, the rest of the Big Ten West, we are a physical run football team. There is no team that's wide open. And going back to Barry Alvarez, you said 30 years. I mean, it has been run the ball, play defense, win the possession time, and be happy as heck when you win 10-7. I mean, those days, in my opinion, are going to be over with the philosophy change on offense. And, now it's going to be the defense. They just can't lose that edge on defense. And that's Luke's background. So he's aware of that. That's not going to be a problem.
We'll talk about some of this with Luke Fickell in just a handful of moments. But he's bringing in all new quarterbacks, right? They had a quarterback, Graham Mertz, who was a hotshot recruit. It never really panned out. He transferred out. Now he's at Florida. They brought in 3 new guys. I'm curious what you think it's like to be a head coach when there's really no one in that QB room, nobody who's going to be getting a significant amount of snaps who's been with that program before. What's that like? Yeah,
I mean, you better be a first-year head coach, like Luke. You know what I mean? Because if you're in your second or third year, it can be bad. Not just when you're trying to solve who's the best guy and gives you the best chance to win, but the players in the locker room. I mean, they like seeing who's our quarterback, who's our leader. When you're in the first year, I remember when I went back to Pitt my first year, we kind of rotated some guys in there, and the players will buy into that because every player now has a sense of urgency. Hey, I better be doing my job because I want to earn a spot.
Right.
But once you get settled in, you got to have one guy, and Luke will make that decision. I mean, he did a fabulous job, like you say, at Cincinnati with Ritter. I mean, he might be a starter in the NFL this year.
And by all accounts, Tanner Mordecai, who's the kid who transferred in from SMU, who had a really good run, more than 70 touchdown passes the last 2 years there combined. He's been getting most of the first-string reps. But I'm curious, too, because quarterback, different than any position in any sport, we always talk about it's the most important one. You have to be a leader, right? I mean, have you ever had a quarterback where you were like, well, we don't consider him one of our best leaders? And I'm not looking for you to call out names, but I'm saying in Wisconsin, I assume these guys are good leaders, but we're going to find out. They didn't know anyone at all when they transferred in, as well as the coaching staff.
No, obviously leader, because you're doing more talking than anybody on the team.
Right.
Every play you're making a call, you're in the huddle, you're looking at guys in the eyes, they're looking at you. When things go bad, they're watching you to see how you respond. Do you have enough confidence to bounce back? So, you have to be a good leader. The rest of the football team has to believe in the quarterback if you're going to have any chance to win, particularly when you're putting in a whole new system. I mean, there's going to be a lot of players, at Wisconsin right now that are kind of looking around, trying to figure out what's going on. And if the quarterback has control of it, and if the quarterback is confident in what he's doing, it can make everybody's job a lot easier.
You know what's better than you and I talking about Luke Fickell? Luke Fickell talking about Luke Fickell.
Let's get him in.
He's
Absolutely.
Join us in just a handful of seconds. He's putting the microphone on right now. But Well, it's a big deal in Madison. Luke Fickell is the new man in charge, first year as a Wisconsin head coach. We talked a moment ago about the transfer QBs who are coming into the program. Brand new offensive coordinator, Phil Longo, as well. You can see their open spring practice Saturday right here on the Big Ten Network. And it's time for our big interview. Heck, 2 years ago, this man was the National Coach of the Year. Now he's talking to me. Talk about a drop for him. He's Luke Fickell. He's good enough to join us now. Luke, let me start with this. Talk to me about the food in your town. It's a new town for you. It's a new state. Give me the lay of the land. What stood out to you so far?
Well, obviously the cheese curds is first and foremost, but I'm still learning. You know, I'm kind of back and forth. My family finally got here this past week, so I'm actually now starting to get out in the town and enjoy some of the finer things. Not to mention it's thawed out a little bit as well.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to wait to the end of spring to start bringing up some names of different places, but. A lot of things that are new, but everything's been really, really good, and the food probably is one of the tops of that list.
Now, do you have the confidence at this point that if you actually didn't like cheese curds or you didn't like a spotted cow or anything, that you would actually say it?
No, I don't think so. I think I was in a place before that there was some food items that were really popular around there, and I don't know that I would tell you that I was really, really into it, but yet I would never have said that. So I have respect for obviously all the things, the finer things that maybe I don't feel as great about, but respect that it's a part of the community in the area.
Smart man. Don't want to alienate the fan base. Very smart. What have you learned about the fan base? When you're out and about and Badger fans have come up to you, what have they said to you?
Obviously, they're excited. I think that the thing that I've learned in the short amount of time is that they love this place, and whether they had a favorite of obviously Coach Christ or Coach Leonard or whoever, Coach Alvarez. I think more than anything, what I've noticed is they love all things Badgers. They love Badgers football, and when they're like that, no matter what the situation, no matter what's happened or who's in charge, they're supportive. So I felt that from the get-go, from the time I walked in here. And most importantly, obviously, in the whole community. And then I think, from the high school coaches in particular, the support and of the entire program is so strong. As an outsider, I call myself of not being from here or playing here, walking into this area of not recruiting it as well. They are so gung-ho. They are so pro-Wisconsin and for us in this program. It has just been really refreshing.
What are those fans going to see from you guys tomorrow afternoon?
Well, I hope they see a really competitive group of guys. I think a team that plays with a lot of intensity and some speed. And it's not just the tempo that which you play the game, meaning how fast you snap the ball and how many plays do you get in. Tempo is just the way you do things, from the way you take the field, the way you take the come off the field, the intensity that you have, whether you're on the sidelines or you're in the game. I think that more than anything, we're just trying to create that environment that is very, very, very competitive in all things that we do, and that we recognize and understand that in this game in particular, if you don't have an intensity level to what it is that you're doing, then you're probably not going to be the best at it.
We were just talking about this situation you have where you're bringing in all sorts of new stuff, including new players, including the most important position, the quarterback. Tell me about your quarterbacks individually. Let me start with Tanner. What stands out about him?
Well, you said the most important position is still the nose guard. Let's just get that clear. But the second most important position is the quarterbacks. And I think that we've got a really good group of guys that's competitive. And Tanner has walked in here. And I'm not even talking about his play on the field. Obviously, guys will be able to see that, whether it's tomorrow or get an opportunity to see that hopefully this coming season. But he's walked in here with an incredible attitude, with a humbleness to himself, of embracing all things Wisconsin, a culture that's been here, the locker room, the guys. He has really done a great job at being himself, but showing the genuine humility that it takes to kind of win the locker room and create that leadership role. You're not just a leader because you're a quarterback. You're a leader because people will follow you. And I think he's done a great job at embracing all that.
What about Braden and Nick, some of the other new quarterbacks you're bringing in? What stands out so far?
So Braden is a kid that you can tell he's got a high level of intelligence for football. He's a junkie. We can't get him out of the office. I mean, he is going to continue to get better and better and better. and he's a competitor. And I think that's what gives us a chance to continue to grow. This thing isn't just kind of Tanner's job. It's hey, we're going to go compete. And then there's Nick. Nick is a guy that is an incredible athlete. I think he's got probably as high a ceiling as anybody, and I mean at any position here, with a great arm. And he's done a really good job. He's obviously been in a little bit different system. I think both of the other guys had been in more of a system that's similar to what Coach Longo and we're running. Nick's been in a system that's been a little bit different, so I think that he's got a greater learning curve to grasp the whole system, but his talent level is pretty obvious, and it's be interesting to see him as he goes out tomorrow. And things are a little bit more live and things are kind of on their own. There is some improvising and there is some ability to just make plays. I think Nick's going to have a great day.
Okay, so you brought up Phil Longo, right? And you knew Wisconsin football in the 90s when you played against them and Barry Alvarez. They ran the ball an awful lot. They continued to do that throughout the decades. But this style is much more of, I mean, it's not like crazy passing 9 out of 10 times, but it's going to be more passes than we're used to seeing from Badger football. How different do you feel it's going to be from what we've seen historically the last 30 years or so?
Well, I would say it's going to look a lot different to a lot of people. And I just mean that by the way that you use all 53 1/3 of the field, not just the vertically, but horizontally. So I think the unique thing that Phil does, and his offense in particular, is going to use the width of the field every bit as much and create, space for athletes. And it doesn't mean we don't run the football. It doesn't mean that Braylon and Ches and those guys can't be really, really successful and have the same rushing yards they've had in the past and have the same tailbacks that have historically been here. It just means that there's going to be more space created with it. I mean, some of the run plays might be, things that are out in space. They might be 2-3 yard throws that turn into a run play based on creating space for not just the tailback, but also the wide receiver. So I think the initial idea that this is a guy that is a pass happy or a air raid type of guy, I think that's a stereotype. I think that the beautiful thing about Coach Longo, he's a very intelligent football coach. He understands walking into a place that has a tradition, what's going to give us a chance to be successful. It's to have balance, but it's going to start up front. It's going to start with the ability to run the football.
As I mentioned, you've been around the Big Ten for an awful long time. There's a brand new commissioner coming in to the Big Ten in Tony Petitti. If you were given an hour with him, one-on-one, what would you want to bring up to him?
That's way above. Like I'm worried about 120 18 to 22-year-olds. I'm worried about a community, a state that, for me to spend an hour to try to give my insight on what could help him or the Big Ten should do, I leave that to Coach Fitz and all the rest of the guys and Coach Ferentz and those guys that have a greater grasp of how we can help the Big Ten and the things that we can do. I got to stay within my lanes. I've got to make sure I'm focused on these guys in particular, what it is that we're doing here and getting our feet kind of stuck in this ground. And I got a lot to learn, and not just about football. I got a lot to learn about continuing to grow the culture here and the history here. And so an hour of something outside of that probably would not be good to him nor myself.
All right, so whenever Commissioner Petitti retires, I'll have you back on, and then it might have been 10 years or so, and we'll get your thoughts on that.
Then I'll have the hindsight. Then I can be like you guys and they give the commentary after the fact and say, that's what I would have done.
It's a lot easier after the fact, man. You and I talked a while back when you were in your interim year as a head coach at Ohio State, and we talked about a bunch of stuff off the field. You told me you played golf right-handed, got injured, then played golf left-handed, and were even better than you were when you golfed right-handed. How many other things in life are you ambidextrous about?
Well, as you said, I got better. That's a relative term, right? Better from one to the other. That's not saying exactly what that means, but it didn't take too much to get better going from one side to the other. I don't know. I'm kind of one of those guys. I'm a nose guard. Right, I'm a defensive lineman. I'm a former wrestler. Like those guys, we're different in general. So I guess whatever's kind of thrown at us, I kind of look at it as golf is like baseball, right? Depending on who's pitching and which way the fairway is rolling or going, I can go from either side. So I didn't think it was that abnormal to go from both sides there playing golf because, I never played it as a kid. I watch baseball players hit left-handed and right-handed, and they're the best in the league. So I figured, why can't I do that in golf?
I mean, I can't think of one golfer who does that, though. It's really special, Luke.
Well, going from bad to worse or from worse to bad, I don't
Right.
think is all that difficult. So let's be careful. But it makes for good things when you're trying to. I tell guys I can play them. I'll play you. I'll bet you whatever you want. But both of us got to play opposite-handed.
You also told me a story. I want you to retell it about the way you proposed to your wife, because it was one of the most low-maintenance proposals I've ever heard. It involved a tray of bagels.
Yeah, I'm not the most creative guy. I think as you would look within our program, if we do anything creative, you're going to probably have an idea socially or whatever we're doing. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are helping me out. And at that point in time in my life, I didn't have a whole lot of people to help me out to create something that probably wasn't me. So it was very low maintenance, very, very not creative, as my wife would say, but I guess really showed her who I was. A simple bagel with a ring in the middle of it on a Saturday morning. You know, it took a lot of time for me to think that out. And, you know, that bagel was, I think it had to be at least 75 cents at that time. So, I mean, those things add up.
Hey, she said
The
yes.
world was different then. I didn't really even have a job yet. So I was, you know, I mean, that was my first job. I was a GA. So, yeah, and exactly right. So I knew she was the right one if she said yes with as little maintenance as that was.
You clearly, that's a binary thing, right? It's either a yes or a no. You got the yes, so it's clearly worked, Luke.
I kind of am strategic with that. I might not be real creative, but I'm strategic at knowing, you know, the right situations to do things, you know, when to pick your battles. At least I've learned that. So I had a pretty good feel that I was in a good spot. And, you know, I think that obviously I haven't changed a whole lot. Let's just say that. So the beautiful thing about it is we're going strong. And, you know, whether it's been in Columbus and Cincinnati or now in Madison, and I think it's worked. So I'm not changing now.
Luke Fickell, head coach of the Badgers. Always great talking to you. It's awesome to have you back in the conference once again. And have a great time tomorrow at the spring game, all right?
Looking forward to it. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Now, speaking of Michigan, Paul Juda is now the third Wolverine in program history to take home the Heisman Trophy of men's gymnastics. The Nissen Emery Award, winning that honor this past week, goes to the top college gymnast in the country. And Paul Juda, multiple-time Big Ten Gymnast of the Year, is joining us. Now, first off, I mean, where do you keep a trophy like that? That sucker is so big. Are you taking it to restaurants with you and trying to get free meals out of that?
No, I wish, right? I wish. But I think the biggest and most motivating thing about this trophy, well, first of all, I'll give you guys some comparison. It's about like 40 pounds. So it's a custom build. It's one of one every year, and I was lucky enough to say that we've got one in the gym from Justin Tillman's year. So that was the first Michigan athlete to win one, and then of course Sam McCulloch. So what's real cool about this trophy is it disassembles and they give you a suitcase that you put the trophy in. And I started a little tradition this year actually with the suitcase. I ripped up some tape and I wrote down my name and University of Michigan, and I wrote down the year and I taped it on the inside of the suitcase, and I hope to keep that tradition going. So
that's smart. That's cool. And I was right. You are bringing it around with you. You got your own travel thing for it. This is awesome.
I just put it in my car to bring it here, and I had to put the seatbelt on it. It's precious cargo. So
I want to see it again though. So it comes apart, you say?
Yep. So it's got the bolts on the bottom right there, and then you'll screw it off, and the pommel horse and the gymnast right here comes off, and then the base comes off, and you're able to kind of put it in a suitcase. It's got a foam cutout, so it's good for travel. Luckily, we only went on a bus, so I didn't have to worry about that.
Well, that's pretty cool, man. Give me the words to describe what it means for you to have that thing in your possession.
You know, I mean, I remember roughly, you know, right when I got hurt that it was going to be a different kind of year, and you know, the thoughts about this trophy weren't necessarily even the forefront of my mind for a long time. But towards the end of the season, when I realized I probably wasn't going to compete, I started wondering if if there was even any chance. I don't remember anybody, and I really don't know how it really happened to get this kind of award when you don't compete. So I have to commend and say thank you again to all the people that voted for me, that still thought that I was an exemplary model of a person and gymnast, and it meant a lot. Standing up there and being able to see and really understand the history of the trophy was incredible. So it's unremarkable.
You brought up your injury, which prevented you from competing this year. So how do you describe what this season was like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So this season was different than anything, right? So 3 days after the new year, we're in the gym, we're training. I'm super excited for this year. It's going to be another killer year. I can feel it. And we can go into a little bit of the kind of team that we had this year and why I thought this year was going to be so great. And a kind of freak accident on the high bar. And I came off and I hurt my ankle real bad. And at first I thought it was just going to be just a bad sprain. And it ended up being much worse. And my role transformed from not being just a leader by example, what I was so used to, and being elected team captain this year. That's what I thought I was going to do, just keep doing the results and showing off the gymnastics. But what I learned this year, what was so different, was there's other ways to lead. And that was to be kind of the cheerleader and to be the type of person that the team needed in that moment when I couldn't be down on the floor with them. So that's how this year's been way different.
Well, I have no doubt you attacked that with the same intensity you normally do.
Oh, I did.
By the way, what is the injury update right now? How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. It was the ankles no problem. It was a pretty wild weekend in the NCAA championship. So we ended up making the swift call to compete about a week and a half prior to the more like 3 weeks prior to the competition. The coaches and I had a very intense conversation and said, like, if we're going to do it, let's really go for it. Let's see if there's even a shot. And so for those 4.5 weeks, roughly 3.5 weeks, something like that, it was complete and utter focus. I don't remember kind of giving so much attention to one goal in a very long time, especially after sitting out for so many weeks, or for so many months. And so what I did was I just committed myself fully. Every day I had a kind of strict checklist of things that I went through. And for 4 weeks, I put myself in the best possible position. I met with some incredible people that helped me, that guided me along their journey. I kind of was wishy-washy for a little bit. I was thinking about doing it. I didn't know if it was worth it. And what ended up happening was I wanted to make the decision that would leave me with no regrets. And so I decided, as long as I did everything in my power to try and put myself into that position, then at least I would never have the question of what if, Right. So we get to the competition, and unfortunately during the warm-up I slipped, and I kind of busted up my head on live TV, and I messed up my fingers a little bit, and it pulled me out of the competition. But something that I'm able to cope with, and the reason the reason that I'm able to kind of be happy about it is that I knew that I did everything I could have in order to be able to have competed. There was never, even though the boys did extremely well and we were real close to first place, I knew that had I not prepared, I would have never been able to live with myself. So I'm glad that I prepared, and the result is what it is.
Well, and how about your teammates without you, still being national
runner-up?
Oh
my gosh!
And this Fred fella, 3 national titles. He's okay, huh?
You got to bring Fred here. Fred's a lightning ball of energy. He's unbelievably funny. He's probably one of our class clowns, I would say, if we've got a team class clown, and he's just unbelievable. Having Fred in the gym is one of the best things, I think, for everybody. He pushes what I think all of us thought was the limits of talent. He's one of the most talented athletes that I've ever seen, one of the hardest workers, one of the funniest guys, and also is really able to be in that moment where he's doing his social media and TikTok following, and then snap right out of it and go right into his super dedicated and super focused work. He's an incredible athlete. He's got a great future, and I'm so unbelievably happy to have him on our team.
Paul, if I have this right, you're a psychology major, is that right?
That's right. Okay,
what number am I thinking of?
7.
Nailed it. Man, you're good. Man, you have studied. This is my understanding of what psychology is, and clearly I was right as you nailed it. Hey, so what's next for you, Paul? What are the next few months going to be like?
Well, the next few months are real fun. You know, we've got a good group of guys staying in Michigan and Ann Arbor. We're going to keep training. I said it last year when I won the national title, and I think it echoes even more today. It's only about 360 some days up until the next national championships, and that'll be in Ohio State. And that date's coming soon. And it'll be real fun to go there with a fully prepped team. I think the energy in the gym for the guys that are staying is going to be incredible. And in the next couple of months, we've got the USA Championships in August in San Jose, California. And then coming back for a 5th year in the real estate development program here at Michigan. So I'm real excited to keep repping the Block M, and so great to be a Michigan Wolverine.
Good for you, man. Paul Juda, great talking to you. Show us the hardware one more time as we go. Yeah, there it is. There it is. Congratulations, Paul. Thanks, man.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
He knew the number 7. He's really talented. Again, the schedule for spring games looks like this in the Big Ten. Due to weather, the Illini game was moved. It's now tonight in Champaign. Tomorrow, Iowa plays early. Purdue will have a game you can't quite see, but you can see the Gophers, Huskers, and Badgers back-to-back-to-back games on the Big Ten Network Saturday, all afternoon long. As I mentioned, Dave Wanstedt is back with us once again. Let's talk about those teams that are going to be on our air, starting off with the Fighting Illini. Their game's coming up tonight. Actually, you won't be able to see that one, but again, it's on it is in Champaign. They had to change things around because of the funky weather across the Midwest right now. They had the number 1 defense in the country last year. A defense so good, their defensive coordinator is now the head coach at Purdue. What is it like as a head coach to try to maintain the level you were at when the guy who was in charge of everything in that area specifically is now gone?
Yeah, I think that Brent did the right thing. You know, he elevated from within, right? So it's not like you're bringing somebody in from the outside. I mean, Aaron Henry was on the staff. They moved him up. The players know him. Obviously, the players, Brent wouldn't have made that move if he thought that the players weren't going to respond in the right way. So I think that part of it's done. The key is players. You know, they graduate some really good guys. Obviously, some players have left. So it's going to be a matter of who they replace, whether it's within Mike or through the portal, that they can keep the talent level where it's at. Because that's the real key about this defense. To me, looking at Illinois, the whole story is going to be offense. I mean, we talked about Josh McCray last year. Was he going to be a guy that could be a 1-2 punch in the backfield? Well, his time is now. He's got some big shoes to fill, but he's got to do it. And then the quarterback position. Tommy DeVito was my guy last year, okay? And nobody wanted to hear it. But
He did well.
I thought that guy was a stabilizing force on that offense and that football team. That now, obviously, they got a new one coming in. I guess it's going to be another transfer portal. Luke, was it Altmaier?
Yep.
Altmaier. So he's going to have to step up and perform. I mean, because the running game may not be as productive as it was. Sooner or later, you're going to have to throw the football.
I will say it is fun that there's a vibe around that program again.
Oh, absolutely.
Energy around that fan base. They're really excited on that program, which hasn't been that way for
a long time.
I mean, like 2007 when they were the Rose Bowl with Ron Zook's kind of the last time you felt that fun energy around them. You brought up the quarterback spot. We're going to turn our attention to Iowa now, where the big story there is the quarterback, Cade McNamara, transferring from Michigan. We all know the story of Iowa. Their defense was otherworldly last year, and their offense was the exact opposite. Is McNamara the panacea? I mean, can he fix things himself?
And I'm going to finish your sentence before I give you the answer there. And they won 8 games.
Right.
Okay, so give Kirk Ferentz a lot of credit. I mean, as you mentioned, 130th scoring offense, and you win 8 games. Outstanding coaching by him and his staff. Here's the interesting thing with Cade McNamara. He's not in my mind, a dual threat quarterback. He's more of a passer. You got to be able to run. You got to be able to run the ball. He's a conventional quarterback. Will they have the wide receivers to throw the football? Because that's what they're going to have to do. I mean, I believe that, they got Caleb Johnson. He was banged up early in the year. As he came along and got healthy, they got better in running the football. I have all the confidence in the world. I was going to get a good offensive line, assemble one, and they'll be able to run the football. And now you got a quarterback. Will you have the wide receivers outside that can make enough plays? Because you're going to have to do that to score enough points to have a chance to win the conference.
Eric All coming with him as a tight end
option. Big time. They love the tight ends, right?
Right.
Laporta, he was their leading receiver last year. You don't see that very often. That says it right there about an offense.
And the good thing for them in terms of getting more wins is, I think most people think the top 3 teams in the Big Ten this year will be Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. 2 of them are off the schedule for Iowa. They don't play the Buckeyes and they don't play the Wolverines as well. We mentioned Illinois at the top, losing their defensive coordinator, Ryan Walters. He goes to Purdue to be a head coach for the first time ever. Your first time ever as a head coach was when you took over the storied franchise that is the Chicago Bears in 1993. What advice would you give to Walters, who's now taking over a proud program to become a head coach for the first time ever?
You know what, Mike? Before I came up to Chicago and started, I went out and I actually played golf with the late Coach Knoll, Chuck Knoll from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and every hole I had a different question for him. And the one thing that he told me that stuck with me, and I would say this right here, okay? I would say, Coach, here's what you got to do. Why did you get hired? You got hired because of your defensive expertise. That's where you need to spend your time. And you've got to improve the defense. And don't worry about what Braum did with the offense and how explosive. All those things will take care of themselves. But you better, the thing you better take care of is the defense. And I think that Purdue fans the first year are going to sit back and say, okay, his stamp is on the defense. That's why he hired him, because of what he did at Illinois. Then you move on to the offense. And you don't have to do what Jeff Braum did. You don't have to be wide. Jeff Braum was one of the best play callers, let's face it. And in college football, in my opinion, he's going to score points on you. You can do it. There's a lot of different ways to do it. So don't get hung up on that. Be your own man. Take care of that defense as a starting point and move on from there.
By the way, you went golfing with Chuck Knoll? How cool was that?
Sure I did.
How cool was that?
It was great. Every hole, he actually played pretty good.
Yeah?
Every hole I had my little notepad. Tell me about personnel. What did you think about the draft? How did you handle this?
Did you ask him on the tee box or when you're putting?
No, as we were playing,
Okay.
we were walking along there. Oh,
That's
yeah.
smart.
Good man. Absolutely. Great man. Absolutely.
Very good. Remember, this is a Purdue team that won 8 games in the last year, as we were saying, of their head coach, Jeff Braum.